to stay with my grandmother on St. David's. And the boat she was on, it was so rough that it was a 5-day trip from Boston to Bermuda. She was on the boat for 5 days. So they thought I was going to be born on the boat. But luckily, she came in and went to my grandmother's, and about 6 hours after she got there, I was born. Well, I know one of the first things they taught children on St. David's was to learn how to swim, because we were on an island and surrounded by water. And mostly all the children over there was taught to swim from 2 years old. Then we were sent to Sunday school. We had the Methodist Sunday school at 9 o'clock in the morning, the Amy Sunday school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And every Sunday we had to go to those schools. And in the evening at 7 o'clock, we'd have to go to the Church of England to the service. And that was what we did on Sundays, nothing else but Sunday school and church. And any other day, we were taught how to play together, how we all lived on St. David's as one big happy family. And at different times, we'd go to people's houses, the children would get together, and the parents would read to us, mostly reading from the Bible. And that was part of our education. My day school, I started when I was 6 years old. And we went to, the school teacher that we went to was called Cousin Eva. She was a Minors. So we had about 12 children in that school, all about between 5 and 7 years old. And as soon as we got in school, she taught us to say the golden rule: do unto others as you would they should do unto you. We had to say it in the morning, we had to say it in the afternoon when we left school. And we didn't have many school books, so lots of our reading that we had to do was done from the Bible. And them days, it cost my parents 6 pence a week, and all the other parents paid 6 pence a week. So on Saturdays when we were not at school, with 4 boys, and we used to go and catch some small fish and take it up to her so she could have it to eat, because their parents told us that 6 months a week was a very small pay for her.
However, there was more to life than schoolwork.
And tops, spinning tops, and lots of the elderly people over St. David's were carpenters. So they was teaching we boys how to make boats out of cedar. And we used to make boats from 16 inches long unto 3 feet long. We used to make these boats. And we used to sail them in the bay down there to race each other with these boats. And that was some of the sports we had. In order to sail our boats, we needed to make little punts. And how we got to make little punts, we used to collect rum bottles and take them to Gosling Brothers over St. George's, and they paid us so much for these bottles. And we took the money that we made to buy some wood to make our punts. And each of us was taught how to make a punt. So about 5 of us had 5 punts that we used to scull around the bay and race with our boats, which was very nice. Farming and fishing was the only 2 ways of living on St. David's, as I think. There were plenty of farms over there, and at the age of about 10 years old, the children had to go and do things in the farm. And of course, the elderly people used to take us out in a boat and show us how to fish. And it was very nice. We children were taught a lot of things that was good for us when we were young.
What was the origin of the famous St. David's Mohawks?
The Mohawks' origin, as I understand, my grandmother would tell me that years ago there were Indians brought in and stayed with St. David's to, at that time, they were people who could build ships and boats and know how to sail boats. And they were brought in especially for that purpose. And the wives, the Mohawk husband brought some of the wives in. That's the way they started a family on St. David's.
There were other visitors to Bermuda.
There was tourists coming over to St. David's. And 2 or 3 of we children used to take the tourists around. And one place, we used to take them up to the lighthouse. They wanted to see the lighthouse. And below the lighthouse, Mr. Fox lived. He was an elderly person, and he made his own coffin out of cedar. And on those days, when the tourist was coming, he would get in the cedar coffin and play and make believe he was asleep. And we boys used to take the tourists down to see him, and they used to leave money in the coffin for him.
Although tourist tips were welcome, the St. David's Islanders were largely self-sufficient.
We had turtle steak. That was a very good meal on St. David's, turtle steak. And because we grew our own chickens, so we had chickens once a week. And also we had goats, so we drank goat's milk. And we had cows and pigs. And every Christmas, when our parents was making pie, they used to kill the pigs and use the meat for the cassava pie.
Another source of income was piloting.
Yes, piloting was one of the main ways of making a living on St. David's. They had 4 gigs on St. David's for piloting. And the man used to go up to the lighthouse and watch for the ships to come in. When the ship was sighted, they had 4 different lots of people who to man these 4 gigs, and they had 4 pilots. So they would run down to where the gigs was, take off, and the one who got to the ship first was the one who got to pilot the ship.
But eventually the time came to leave St. David's.
In 1927, I was 14 years old, and I had been working on St. David's, but I lost my job. And there was an ad in the newspaper on that Sunday about they wanted a young person to learn printing. So I got up 6 o'clock in the morning, went to St. George's, caught the bus, and drove to Hamilton, and went to the place where they had advertised for a young fellow. When I got there, Mr. Robert Crawford was the owner, and he asked me where was I from. I said St. David's, and he said, "You come up here for a job?" I said yes. He said, "Well, you'll have to read something for me to know how good you are." So I read an article in the paper, and after I read the article, he says, "You're very good, you got the job." And I was lucky because my mother was living at that time on Engle Street, which was not too far away. And I stayed with my mother then, and I used to walk to work, which wasn't too far at all. And it was nice because I learned a lot of things about printing, which before I'd never thought that I would have done anything like that. And I stayed on Engle Street for a couple of years, then my mother moved to Warwick, where she was from anyway. And went on around Warwick, it was nice because I met quite a few of my relatives. And one of my relatives played in the Warwick band. So he told me that I better start to play in the band too. So he started to teach me music. And I started to play in the Warwick band. And I was the youngest one in the band at that time. So after playing in the band for quite a while, on 24th of May, and we went to St. David's, the band went to St. David's. And boy, was there people down there proud of me to see me playing in the Warwick band, which is very nice. And after being in Warwick for quite a while, I moved to Camp Hill, Warwick. And it was at Camp Hill that I learned how to do the old-fashioned dancing. And one night, I went to Hamilton at the Alexandrina Hall to a dance. And while I was there dancing, a young lady from St. George's that I knew very well said, "Come over here, I want to introduce you to somebody." And who the somebody was Lillian, who I married after a while, which was very nice, and I always thank that girl for introducing me to Lillian. And after we got married, we built our own house in Spring Hill, Warwick. And we lived there for quite a long time. Then we went away. Lillian went to study hairdressing, and I went to study more about using printing machines. And we were away until 1939. Just before the war started, we came back home. And while we were in the States, we met a lot of people who was interested in Bermuda. So we said, when we come back to Bermuda, we're going to start some place to bring a lot of these people to Bermuda. And that's how we started our first guest house. And of course, that part of it was my wife's duty, not mine. When we first built our house in Warwick, a friend of ours named it for us after my name and Lillian's name, Archie Minors. That was why the house was named Archie Minors, because our friend named it after us. And when we left and went to New York to stay, we were living in Harlem with Lillian's sister. And we were lucky to meet quite a lot of people up there, and especially the Abyssinia Baptist Church. We went there and met a lot of the congregation, and they were interested in coming to Bermuda. First of all, they wanted to know where Bermuda was. Lots of them didn't know, and we used to tell them, and they were interested. Where can we come to Bermuda, and where can we stay? And Lillian and I said, when we go home, we're going to think about it and maybe find some place where we can start a guest house. And that was the start of it.
Mrs. Minors explained how she and her husband promoted the business.
Yes. After we started the guest house, we bought this place large enough to accommodate, I think, about 14 at the time. I started writing letters, and I soon got tired of writing letters. One of them wrote back and said, "Why don't you come up and we'll make arrangements for you to talk to the people?" So I got busy taking pictures around Bermuda of places I know they could go, beautiful pictures, because Bermuda's beautiful. And I went up there with my camera, slides at the time, camera and slides. And they made arrangements at churches, clubs, homes, different organizations for me to show these slides of Bermuda. And at that time, the floral pageant was a big thing. And there were beautiful pictures of the floral pageant. And I took these pictures up there, showed them how beautiful Bermuda was. They all got anxious to come down. And it started from there, them coming, by me going up. And of course I went up every season, not just one time. Every time, as soon as I made the money in the summer, I took it and went up there and spent it promoting Bermuda. Promoting fishing too, because there were some of them up there asking me about fishing. And we had friends here that used to fish a lot. So we promoted fishing also. That's how the tourists started to come here in groups by the promotion. The first group that came here was from the Abyssinia Baptist Church.
Mrs. Minors discussed the best and worst aspects of running a guest house in Bermuda in the 50s, including the problems of segregation.
Well, I don't think there's any worse, but there were a lot of best. There's so many best, I really don't know where to start. First, I enjoy looking at people, and I used to entertain them. I had to. I had no choice at that time. So I took them around, showing them the places, what to do, where to go, and I enjoyed it just as much as they did, taking them around. That was one of the highlights of, so much so that I used to take them to, well, it was very few restaurants they could go to, anyway, or hardly any. So one day I was at the aquarium. I used to take them sightseeing. I used to stop at the aquarium, then Devil's Hole, and keep going on. And I would take a picnic lunch, and we'll go to Horseshoe Beach, and I let them swim there and have a picnic. And after having a nice time, they'll all come back home. Then the boat rides. They wanted to go on boat rides. They couldn't go on the other boat rides, so I organized my own boat ride. I hired a boat, and I would fix lunch and rum swizzles, and took them on the boat for a ride, and serve lunch on the boat. And they had lovely boat ride. So they really enjoyed Bermuda. I saw to it that they enjoyed Bermuda. And they would take pictures and go back and show it. Anytime there was a celebrity that come into the island, every now and then one would come. I would take the picture, and of course when I go back, show it on the screen. Oh, was so-and-so there, was so-and-so there, and then it just boomerang from there. That was my promotion. I called it the safari. It was my safari then. At that time, the Trade Development Board was not sending any safari abroad like they do now. Now all the hotels have come together with the Department of Tourism. It's a combined thing now, but at that time it was a one-man thing, and that was me.
Following their busy careers, the Minors family looked forward to retirement in a home of their own.
We, about 25 to 30 years ago, decided that we would like to buy a house to reside in if we got rid of the guest house. So we were contacted by an agent that told us about this house, and he made arrangements for us to come down and see it. We came down to look at it, and one of the things that I was enthused in about this house was the cedar work inside of it. And I was told that during the blight that the owner of this house used the cedar trees for the cedar work inside the house. And Lillian was enthused about the garden in front of the house. That, she said, that was lovely, that garden was lovely. So we decided over 25 years to buy this house down here, and we were lucky at the time to be able to buy this house for £23,000, and it's 2.5 acres. And I think we did the right thing, because the situation and all of the things that is done here has been wonderful for us.
Well, the first thing I like was the fruit trees. Every house, I might say this because I feel terrible about this, every house I go to, I have been planting fruit trees. And every time the fruit is ready to pick, I go and move somewhere else. And when we found this one and it had fruit there, I said, this is it. This will compensate for all the fruit I've planted and haven't been able to pick. And then it has such a huge array of flowers and plants around Bermuda. It's a lot of flower and plants around here. That's what I like about it. I love the gardens. The palms, the flowers, oh, I can't name them. I guess you see them around. There's a lot of flowers around. That's what I like. I used to do my own gardening until just recently. I haven't been able to go in the garden. So now I'm doing potted plants. That's my gardening now. But I still love the garden.
Many of Mr. Minors' memories are summed up in his poetry.
St. David's, the land of my birth. To me, it is the greatest place on earth. Living there was heaven to me, sharing and caring like a happy family. There was Cousin Arthur and Uncle Billy, Aunt Alice and Annie, and Godpa Willie. Red Benny, Tybee, Shadow, Holly, Walking Bill, Arthur Pep, Cootie, Bolly, Hunky, War Baby, Corey, Jerry and Ted, Willie, Bucky, Keimer, Quincy and Jed, Hold the Weight, Hardmouth, Sammy, Red Billy, Theodore, Guy, Gable, Daniel and Hilly, Penny, German, Boston, Dew, Bongo, Blisters, UP, Kazoo, Cuddy, Boo, Lone, Huckleberry, Fibley, Manny, Jacob, Esau, Jerry, Amanda, Teresa, Caroline, Nessie, Polly, Hetty, Weeman, Abby, Cressy, Molly, Vesta, Gledmina, Priscilla, Estina, Lizzie, Sonny, Sanny, Tootsie, Dessalene, Vesta, and Izzy, Cassie, Uncle Genius, and Skyso Jack. Maybe others I have really lost track. Roos Bay, Ennis Bay, Dollars Bay was lovely for swimming, but please note these bays were named after women. Warren's Bay, which is a little beach at the east end, is the only swimming hole named after a man. There was the Methodist Church, AME, and the Chapel of Ease, so we could worship wherever we pleased. Brick ovens and chimneys with cedar firewood produced fresh bread, soups and stews that tasted real good. There were chickens, cows, goats, and pigs, sailboats, railboats, whaleboats, rowboats, whaleboats, and gigs. Fishing and farming produced a good yield, plenty fish and vegetables, and a beautiful Easter lily field. Flying kites on Good Friday was lots of fun. Baked snapper, fish cakes, and hot cross buns. I left St. David's in 1927, and up until then it was my blue heaven. It is now joined to Bermuda, more modern you see, with planes, cars, buses, and the U.S. Navy.
One of the greatest changes to the old way of life in St. David's was the coming of the railway.
The St. David's Island Bridge, it was nice for the people to be able to come off St. David's without a ferry. You could walk, ride, or run, whatever you wanted to, on the St. David's Island Bridge. And now it has changed because they don't have the bridge. After the base took over down there, the filling that they made from the base to Cooper's Island and the other islands made it possible to make a road without the use of the bridge. And I think that was a wonderful thing too, because now St. David's and St. George's and all the places is mainland instead of islands.
Nowadays, St. David's familiar landscapes are rapidly changing. Mr. Minors revealed his thoughts on some of Bermuda's social changes.
We were taught to respect everybody we met. And that was one of the main things that we were taught, was to be nice, kind to people. And we, as St. David's Islanders, thought that we had the best place to live. And we decided that if we left St. David's and went to the other part of Bermuda, we were going to take those methods that we use to respect people and use it everywhere we went, to show off to people how nice we could be and how nice Bermuda could be if you use those methods. And I think it was wonderful the way years ago people in Bermuda lived. They were kind to each other, they helped each other, and especially during the horse and buggy days when you didn't get around much unless you rode a bicycle. The people seemed to be more friendly than they are now, because like after we got the motor cars and different ways and means of traveling, we seem to have lost that feeling for each other, which I think we should try to bring back some of those feelings, because it would be good for Bermuda. And also, we were very nice and kind to the foreigners that came here, the tourists, you know, and everything, that we were taught to be nice and kind to them and to do things for each other, which I think it's a little lacking right now. Maybe the young people will have to be taught some of those things that we were taught, to bring Bermuda back to that way of living.